on public safety. I double checked.
You could use it well. I could use it well.
Got some changes.
She used it well. She used it well. Not worry about.
We ready?
Good afternoon. I hereby call this April the 10th meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. Before we move forward to our business, at least 12 times a year from this chamber, from this dais, I know I speak on behalf of the committee and the council. We want to take a moment and thank our police department, our fire department, and our emergency management departments for the work that you do to both protect and serve our citizens. If you never hear it, which I know you do, you're going to hear it here. So again, we thank you and we appreciate your efforts. For those who aren't aware, we have both a consent and a general agenda. Items on the consent agenda are typically approved with one sweeping motion unless a member of the council or committee asks an item to be pulled for consideration. Members of the committee, I do know we have a request to pull item C2. With that being said, is there a motion to approve the balance? It's been motioned and properly seconded. And just so everyone will know, Councilmember Burke is not with us in person. However, she is with us virtually, and she will be stating her vote out loud. So we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, please say yes. So Councilmember Burke, opposers, no.
Could you hear?
Councilmember Burke, if you just nod your head if you are in agreement of item C2. Okay, that is 4 votes. That is approved unanimously. Thank you. I mean, item C's 1 and 3. Now we move to item C2. Madam Clerk.
Item C2, resolution authorizing a lease agreement for the second floor in the Winston Mutual Building for the Police Department's Community Resources Unit located in the East Ward.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilmember Mundy asks that this item be pulled for comments and consideration. Councilmember Mundy is recognized.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. I think this is the department that offers a number of resources and services to our citizens, and I don't know if Chief Mayo or someone else from that department. Is this Tanya Childress's department?
This is the police
It's the police.
item. We've got Chief.
The resources, so this would be the more like Kim's department. Okay. If you could tell us some of these services that are provided, because I don't think we always do a good job of blowing our own horn and letting our citizens know what our different departments do that are kind of outside the traditional things that they already know.
Absolutely. First, good afternoon, Chair Taylor, members of the committee. The unit you're talking about is the Community Resource Unit, and this is a unit that basically offers a potpourri of activities for the community. You've all heard about our Operation Reed, which is our ice cream truck, Sweet Reed's truck. And they deploy that truck. They go to different facilities, recreation centers across the city. They provide different classes on a various amount of topics. You can find them at almost all of the community events. With a table, with all sorts of resources available for the community. So if you name it, they do it. They are the bridge between the police department and the community, and they do a great job. Even including the Special Olympics. They're the liaison with us in the Special Olympics and other members of the community.
One other question, is this the department that does training, for instance, active shooter training?
Yes. So that's part of one of the many topics that they train community, churches, all sorts of facilities.
That's come up several times in interviews when we've had some gun violence, and I think that's a very important resource to point out to the citizens that if they want that training, this is the department. And how would they get in touch with this department?
Through the website. You can go to the website or call the police department, and we'll patch them through to that unit.
Thank you very much. And I misspoke, but the fire department does have resources like this for their services as well. Thank you, Chief Ben.
Any other questions for Chief Penn on item C2? Councilman Mundy, you pulled the item. You want to make a motion?
Like to move for this approval for item C2.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly motioned and seconded. All in favor, please vote yes. Opposers, no. Item C2 is approved unanimously. Now we'll move to our general agenda. Item G1, please.
Item G1, ordinance amending Chapter 18 entitled Civil Defense regarding curfews and state of emergency proclamations.
I'd like to recognize Attorney Carmen.
Thank you, Chairman Taylor. Before we start on this item, can I make sure we did correctly reflect Councilmember Burke's vote on that last item? Okay, so make sure. And that was a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chairman Taylor, committee members, and council members. This item, which is an information item, is being brought to you basically as a result of the Weaver plant fire and much discussion that occurred after that fire in terms of the decision not to declare a state of emergency. The purpose of this ordinance amendment is to direct staff to engage more fully when you have a potential state of emergency that is based upon circumstances arising in a particular ward, to have discussions not only with the mayor, but the council member of the ward about whether or not a state of emergency declaration is needed. I think it was clear from the Weaver plant fire that in terms of staff, not all lines of communications were directed to the appropriate council member of the ward. And so this is to encourage and make sure we're inclusive in that discussion about whether or not a state of emergency is needed. Because I think had that occurred with respect to the Weaver plant fire, it's possible that a different decision would have been made. And we certainly want to make sure that we are attentive to the concerns of the council member of the ward who has to be responsible for the constituents of that ward for any decision that's ultimately made. Now, let me make sure it's clear that the decision, the final decision, of course, is rests with the mayor, and this does not change that. This simply encourages staff or requires staff in those circumstances where the situation arises in a ward and sort of isolated to that ward to have and involve the council member of that ward in those discussions. So that's the first part of the change. And the second part, which was somewhat in the ordinance before, but it's not a definitive requirement, but says to the mayor essentially where possible within 24 hours after issuing a declaration of a state of emergency to update council members. So that's the purpose of the ordinance amendment. Again, it's just for information, and it's trying to codify some lessons learned from the Weaver plant fire. And I'll be happy to answer any questions, and certainly Mayor Pro Tem Adams may have some comments as well.
Well, I'll tell you what, I wanted to recognize Councilmember Mundy, but if you don't mind, we are growing and expanding as a city, and when we deal with emergencies, we have to learn how to continue to get better. I know this last situation occurred in Mayor Pro Tem Adams' ward, and I just want to make sure you get the floor first to discuss the item.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Thank you, Attorney Carmen. Thanks to all the emergency responders, again, that responded to the Weaver fire for days, weeks. Again, I know everybody, I'm not going to prolong my comments, but I think all of you have heard me say when it happened that I felt like that I should have had a part in the discussion. And I was not. I mean, I got updates and things like that, but most of you will know, I was like, where is the state of emergency with my constituents in my ward? I said, because, you know, and I was given all of some reasons as to why, and for me, that wasn't good enough. My constituents told me that was not good enough, that they elected me and they expected me to have a voice for them in any discussions of emergency responsiveness to the ward. So again, I am hoping with the attorney's explanation and definition of this, Again, it really doesn't change the main thrust of the mayor declaring the declaration, but it will allow a council member to have a word, to be able to participate and give input as to what they want or what their constituents want. And I think that is the way that we should go. It's a matter of transparency, accountability, and responsibility. And again, this is a lesson learned that if you even look back at what happened in Ohio and Palestine, that hazardous emergencies or emergencies of any type, whether it's a shooting or anything that requires, it covers a lot of area, a lot of people. I think that we have to be responsive to the council members that we're elected by the people that live in those areas. We have to. And the update, I believe we should get updates. When you have, I know the law enforcement and the emergency responders, from what I learned from my days at Emmitsburg, Mr. Vernon and others know, the updates we got were in an email. Okay, I got that. It was COVID or end of COVID. But the deal is, I felt like we should have been able to meet in a, whether it was a situation room, the council chamber, somewhere, just like they did with the press conferences, and we be given an update, our own update. Because there are certain things that we need to know or should know that the community may not need to know right then and there, because we got to get our hands around it or our brain around it. So I just feel like this opens up an opportunity for better communication, Chair Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Adams. Councilmember Mundy.
Attorney Carmen, the way the first sentence is written, it almost assumes that any situation would be confined to one ward, while it's not unrealistic to think it could straddle or take place in two different wards. The way it's written, if that's the case, would we be able to construe or use this sentence to say both council members would be included? Or does that wording need to be changed slightly so that both or any council member whose ward is involved in this situation would be included in these discussions?
I certainly understand the concern and the question. I think it would, as written, apply if it straddles more than just one ward, but I can certainly enhance it to make it clear that any ward of the council member would be consulted.
I think that's the intent. I just wondered if it needed to be changed.
No problem. I can enhance it.
Councilmember Scipio.
Thank you. Attorney Carmen, just for clarification, in D, which it says termination of state of emergency, it says the mayor shall proclaim in writing the end, but it doesn't say that the declaration is also in writing in B. Should that be both of them should be submitted in writing as well as verbally?
They are both generally done in writing. I'll check that to make sure that's clear as well, but yes.
And I also had, it seemed a little confusing to me on M, territorial applicability. And it wasn't clear that it was just for the city's authorization. We're just doing this state of emergency in our municipality. It seemed a little confusing when you read through it.
Yeah, that language is actually from the statute itself that enables this ordinance. And so the mayor's jurisdiction would be limited to the city of Winston-Salem.
Yeah, I don't know if that's clearly stated in that sentence.
I understand. I'll be happy to look at that, but I'm pretty sure that's existing language from the statute. But I'll see if I can tweak it, make it a little clearer.
And members of the council and committee, as you know, this item is for information only. It's my understanding that based off the comments that come from this committee, we'll give the attorney direction to go back, craft some things, and come back to this committee for consideration. With that being said, I want to recognize Councilmember Larson.
That answers the question. My question's been answered.
Thank you, Councilman Larson. Any other questions or concerns or comments? All right, with that being said, Madam Attorney, you've heard from the council. I'm not sure when this will come back, but whenever, are we thinking a month, 2 months?
I'm thinking it'll come back in May, if that's okay.
Right.
Any opposition to hearing this in May? Thank you.
Okay.
That completes both our consent and our general agenda items. Before I adjourn the meeting, I do want to do something that sometimes I forget to do. We always recognize police, fire, and emergency management, but it's a very thankless job. I want to recognize our city manager and the city management team and just say thank you for the work that you do to keep this city moving forward. We've got a thumbs up from Councilmember Mundy and a few head shakes from the committee, so we really appreciate you and thank you for what you do for our community. Members of the council committee, staff, community, is there any further business that should be considered for the good of the order? Seeing no further business, we hereby consider this meeting to be adjourned. Thank you.